Good day, everybody. This is the Great Logo Makeover and 10 ways to make your logo not suck. And I know that you might be asking yourself, who's this friggin' guy? And this is an appropriate question. My role along with Natalie Elzinga in the art department is to make sure that we create the very best artwork that we can for USA Swimming and deploy it, and then make sure that everybody else uses it right. So you may be thinking, oh good, an art nerd. Well, that is true, and while I am an art nerd, we will not be discussing my favorite fonts, and we'll get on with the show. What is it exactly that we do? Matt went over it real quickly, but this is more of the flavor of the stuff that we do from day to day. We do Splash Magazine, and we dress large-scale venues like the Aqua Zone and Trials and Pan Packs and other large-scale venues. We're also getting into some infographic stuff, which is the very shareable pieces of information reduced down to artwork and then sent out. But most importantly, for our purposes today, we create logos. And one thing that we know in the art department, and you all should know and will know after today, is that your logo is your baby. And you should treat it as such. And one of the most important things to remember about your logo being your baby is that unlike the real world, you don't have to have an ugly baby. Yeah, that was jarring. Let's move along. How do you know if your logo sucks when you're not an art nerd like myself? Well, that's pretty simple. Stuff to remember, asking questions is awesome. Ask some about the current state of your logo as it stands right now. Does your current logo inspire anybody? Does it make your stakeholders proud? Do your athletes show up in their swim jackets or with swim t-shirts to school? Do they wear it out in public? Do you stand out amongst your competition? We'll see some examples of where that utterly fails. Does your logo represent who you are? A moment of clarity. Your logo does reflect who you are. And just like people who start to look like their pets, you may very well begin to take on the image of your logo. And if that strikes fear in your heart, if you own any of these three logos, it should strike fear in your heart. I'm very sorry. So asking questions, still very awesome. Who are you now? Who do you want to be? And probably just as important as who do you want to be, who don't you want to be? Think through those things before you begin the logo process. Now this is my favorite. It's critique time, and we're going to have some audience participation in here as well. So we're all going to have a logo to critique. This is where we give impartial and constructive feedback, even if somebody gets very sad. Tears will not be a barrier for us today. So here's our logo that we are going to be critiquing today for the Wellington Waves. Again, I just hunted this down online. Again, I don't think anybody from the Wellington Waves is here. If you are, I'm very, very sorry. Let's begin the critique. So on the bright side, it's powerful and bright and action-y. But on the negative side, it's kind of chaotic. You can't really read it. Can't really tell what's going on, and it might be utterly confusing. So, what say you about this logo? We want neutral thumbs right now. Neutral thumbs out. Everybody participate. Now what say you? Give your order. What do you think? Up or down? Oh, look at this. We say this logo sucks. Because it sucks. And you may be thinking, that's weird. We all kind of inherently knew that. Even if you can't put it into words, I don't know why, it just sucked. It sucked, it did. I'll tell you what gives. Tip number one, less is Almost always more. There is a difference between simple and simplistic, but when you start reducing down the amount of sheer stuff that goes into your logo, it can be cured of a great many ills. Simplified line work and simple text. You don't have to go full-on art guy on every last element in your logo. And the less you put into it, the better it is. If you're having somebody who wants a mermaid and a star and a wave and a lane line wrapped around somebody's head in the logo, you have to back that truck up. Tip number 2, think about what your logo is going to go on. Most of swim club world needs to think about where your logo is most important. In my experience, it's usually on the swim cap, and that's where your billboard is. And it's usually a very horizontal space. And using that as a hallmark, you can see a vertical mark versus a horizontal mark and which one fills the space better. So a cap logo built the long way versus vertically is always going to work better. More complicated logos cause final output problems, like this one. There's a whole lot of itty-bitty lines in here, and you may wind up having this embroidered at some point. And if you do, and I guarantee if the embroiderer is on the phone, he's doing that on the phone. No, we can do that. We can totally do that. But then he'll do that to you. So you could literally be costing yourself money by having a bad logo. Here's where the differentiation comes out. Cookie cutter logos, that's kind of a bad thing. This is a Google search for swim club logos. Does anybody have a dot-headed freestyler for their logo? Because so does everybody else. Everyone in the universe begins here with a logo. I'm very sorry. Again, if your logo is up there, come see me after this show. Tip 4, limit your use of fonts. And we're not just talking about too many fonts being awful, because it is. It's awful. We got a 5-font text line built at the top and 1 font at the bottom. That simplifies things. Never use more than 2 fonts. But so is using the wrong kind of font. Don't do that. It makes us sad and it confuses your target audience. Bold fonts typically work the best in a sports context. All of those will work. Those will not. Good, bad, good. And tip 5, limit your use of colors. Now, I'm just talking about the number of the colors, but be specific about the color that you're using. Our colors are blue. That's not going to work. What color blue do you mean? Do you mean that blue, or that blue, or that blue, or that blue? We have a, unfortunately, acronymed standard for translating color in the industry. It's the Pantone matching system. So you have to find your PMS number and then go to Pantone.com and pick your color. And if you're not comfortable doing that, there are lots of designers that will do it for you and have some expertise in picking a color. But once you pick that color, and it's a number, so everybody in the universe uses it, from embroiderers to print signage to even the cap screen printers. If you're screen printing t-shirts, everybody speaks the same language. You will never have a different blue. Anybody who swims or attended University of Michigan, are your colors blue and yellow, or are they blue and maize? It's a very specific shade of yellow, and it differentiates Michigan from everybody else. Don't use more than 3 colors in your logo. These are examples of logos that use 1, 2, and 3 colors. The magic number usually is about 2. It's not overly expensive to print on a great many things. A 1-color logo is fine, but 2 colors usually creates enough contrast that your logo really pops. Tip 6, check your logo on dark backgrounds. You're going to have it set up initially, and it's going to be shown to you on a white background, but it's almost never on a white background. It's going to show up against something dark, and even if you're getting it printed on a white t-shirt, very often it's not brilliant, stark white, and you're going to have to see how it looks in that context. Context is everything, which leads us into tip 7. Shrink that sucker down, because once it gets shrunk down, it has to maintain its visual identity. You have to be able to tell what it still is, and it will get shrunk no matter what. If you have a Twitter icon, if you wind up on a heat sheet somewhere, or maybe even an old-fashioned black and white newspaper ad, they get shrunk down very, very small. Maintaining that visual identity is a very important piece of the puzzle. Use appropriate imagery, tip number 8. Are you a competitive swim team? Because this one will work for you. If you're a very competitive swim team and you slap that on your cab, that may not work out very well for you. And vice versa. You're not going to want to put the man-eating shark on the side of the cap if you've got a bunch of cute little kids swimming around in your pool and nobody who wants to break world records. So pick the appropriate image. I can't believe I have to put this one out, but I do. Don't steal your logo. This didn't take me very long, and I found this shining example. If the Riverfront Barracudas from Virginia is in the house today, oh, feel shame. Because the logo for the Pensacola Barracudas, that team doesn't exist anymore, but the copyright on that logo artwork absolutely does. And if these people have, okay, they did recolor the logo a little bit, but they were so lazy they didn't even get rid of the football. There's a football in that logo. What is wrong with you people? You don't even steal right. Okay, wait, that's not my, I didn't mean to say steal better if you're going to steal. Yeah, don't do that. But backing up, somebody does own the copyright on the logo on the left, and if they see it being produced, you're going to get a cease and desist order. Everybody has to protect their own artwork. I've had logos stolen, and if you've had caps, t-shirts, websites, etc., designed with that mark, you're going to have to get rid of it all or face the consequences of having to pay royalties and penalties to the artist who came up with it, because art nerds are always on the lookout for logo thieves. Always. Tip number 10, unless you're an art nerd, don't try this yourself. You don't practice your own law yourself. Hire a designer. There's lots and lots around, and they're not that expensive. And they do have some expertise, and the investment in the front end prevents nightmares on the back end. So here's all of the tips in quick screenshot mode if you want to whip out your cameras and take a quick shot of it, or I can send them out after the fact. But there was something else I forgot, I think. Oh, yeah, the whole logo makeover thing. So prior to SwimBiz, we asked for and solicited clubs to come forward. Those who had taken the very honorable first step of admitting that they had a problem and then come to us for the cure. We got 4 submissions, and I tweeted the contestants this morning, but this was our winner or our loser, kind of depending on how you look at it. Cheyenne Swim Club. For those of you that can't tell, that's a blob of polar bears in the middle. One of whom seems to be biting the other one. Which shows team unity. So we do some background research on who this club is, and it's cute little kids. Look at those. Those are the cutest little kids. So they embrace the polar bear theme. That's the first thing that we figure out in strolling through their photos. The second thing that we figure out as art types is they've managed to get this logo somehow to print out on their team apparel. They've got it on the side of their caps, and I guarantee from across the side of a pool, nobody has any idea what that swim cap says or represents. So we talked to the club, and the most important bits of input that we got from them for this one is that the new logo should be classy and fierce, but not overtly aggressive. And that the polar bear imagery is very important to our brand. Those are very, very important pieces for us to know before we get started. So Natalie Elzinga in the back there, she's been running the mics today. There's Natalie. She designed this logo that I'm about to show you. So this, from here on out, is her taking the torch and running with it. First, what we do is we set up mood boards of pieces of artwork that we like. And this isn't to pirate the artwork, but it's to get a good flavor of the kind of things that we think that we might be able to incorporate into the new piece of art. On this logo, we have the added benefit of having photographic references because we've got a polar bear to work with, and talk about something that will serve as a very, very good regal focus point of the mark. There it is, and we have billions of photographs to pull from. From there, we start initial sketches, and here's the first round of things that we start to play with, start figuring out what pieces, parts might we actually be able to use. Something that might reference polar bear, maybe an iceberg we can plug in. Maybe we can plug them both in. So we start refining it down on the computer. We crack open our expensive Art Nerd software and begin working on this. We plug in a font that seems to work. We plug in iconography that seems to work, and we don't get married to anything. It's very important at this point that we're not falling in love with our own creation, which is insanely difficult. From there, we refine down stuff that we like, stuff that we think might actually work, and stuff that meets our criteria of being able to be seen from a distance, something that's going to be easy to reproduce and isn't going to cost the club an arm and a leg, and meets the criteria of not very fierce, not overtly aggressive, but still regal and respectful. And then we come up with this. Here's the finished mark. Now, you can see that we've got references to swimming inside the water line, right below the major CSC and above the spelled out swim club logo. So I know some of you are going back in your heads talking about, didn't he just say don't build vertical logo? But here's where we break it out. The cap logo is the initials only, because that's what you want on your billboard. This is like a tweet. You want to keep it as short as possible and communicate your message. This new CSC now represents the Cheyenne Swim Club, and when plugged into the entire primary logo, it has context. We can pull it out for a secondary logo. That's cheaper to embroider. Cheaper still to embroider is the text-only mark. So we can plug these in a variety of ways. It maintains the brand integrity all the way through and is useful across the board. We pick a standard color and font. We picked Pantone 279 on this and pulled a font called Avenir, which is widely available. And what you would do with these standard colors and fonts is you'd use those fonts in everything that you do. A newsletter, your own artwork, anything would repeat that font. We do this at USA Swimming a lot. We have a standard suite of fonts that we use for large-scale signage, et cetera. We've used it in the swim biz artwork as well, and we deploy it across the board. And then you see the logo applied to stuff. So here's how it would actually kind of work in the real world. And you see how it works versus the old stuff. Quite a contrast between the before and after. And now let's ask the Art Nerd some questions. Come at me, bro.